Hi, I'm Pastor Freda, pastor of Seaman Lutheran Church and chaplain of Passivant Community. Today, we're going to talk about Joseph, one of the 12 sons of Jacob. Now, Joseph was Jacob's favorite because he was one of the two sons born by Rachel, his wife that he loved so much, more than any of his other wives. And Rachel gave Jacob two sons, Joseph and Benjamin. The problem was that Joseph's brothers were jealous of Joseph. Jacob made no secret that Joseph was his favorite, and he even had a special coat of many colors made for Joseph, and he gave it to him. And Joseph also had a special gift. He could interpret dreams. In his dream, there was grain, and the grain, 11 stalks of grain, bowed down to one stalk of grain. And Joseph knew that that meant that his brothers would bow down to him. So Joseph had another dream in which 11 stars bowed down to him. As you can imagine, this did not go over well with his brothers. So one day, the brothers decided to get rid of Joseph, and they sold him into slavery. Joseph ended up in Egypt. Well, the brothers had to come up with a story as to what happened with Joseph. And so they took his coat and they killed a lamb, and they put the blood on the coat and told Jacob that his son Joseph was dead. Meanwhile, Joseph is working for a man named Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife took a liking to Joseph, and Joseph rejected her advances, but the wife told her husband that Joseph came after her, and Joseph was put into prison. While Joseph is in prison, there are two men that are put into prison with him that are part of Pharaoh's staff. A cupbearer, who was the one that would taste anything before Pharaoh. The other was the baker. And they each had a dream, and Joseph interpreted those dreams. He told the cupbearer that he would be restored to Pharaoh's court. The baker didn't receive such good news. Joseph told him that Pharaoh was going to have him executed. And that is exactly what happened. Later on, Pharaoh has a dream, and nobody can interpret it. And eventually, the cupbearer remembers Joseph and says to Pharaoh, "Hey, I remember this man in prison who interprets dreams." So Pharaoh wants Joseph to be brought to him. And Pharaoh tells Joseph his dream, and Joseph interprets it. And he tells Pharaoh, for 7 years, there's going to be an abundance of food. For the next 7 years, there will be a famine. Somebody needs to figure out how to save food and keep it for when the famine happens. Well, Joseph is named second in command to Pharaoh. Well, once the famine hits, people are coming to Egypt to get food because they knew they had some. And his brothers show up. Only his brothers don't recognize him. But Joseph recognizes them. And he gives them food and sends them back. A little while later, they come back for more. So all of the brothers came to Egypt except Benjamin. And Joseph sends them back. And he says, come back and bring your other brother. Well, they come back and they need more food. And before they're ready to leave, Joseph plays a trick on his brothers. He puts his chalice, his cup, in Benjamin's bag, and he keeps Benjamin there and sends the brothers back and says, bring your father. And Joseph reveals himself to his brothers. And the brothers are afraid because they don't know what's Joseph going to do to us. He has a lot of power. But Joseph says, what you intended for evil, God intended for good. So Joseph and his brothers are reunited. Joseph reunites with Jacob. But I wonder, are there times when something happens that seems to be awful, and yet somehow God turns the situation around and it works out better than we could ever imagine? Joseph forgave his brothers. Forgiveness is not always easy, but I believe we can learn so much from this story of Joseph and his brothers about loving each other and forgiving one another. Peace and blessings.